Okay, so good day, everyone. Depending on where you are. Yeah, great to see the volcano group plugging in as well. I didn't realize that was happening. Of course, I doubt that I would have got up any earlier anyway, but but yeah, just seeing the interest that people are showing from different places. That's it's always that's encouraging, or it's an inspiration for us as monastics, as teachers. See the people's sincerity and their commitment. So today I thought I would maybe follow up a little bit on Jen Yaniko's initial, on the very first day, and then it was, how do you say, it was a spontaneous use of the word enjoyment as a perspective to be considering. And I think that that's it is an important perspective to try to bring to our practice, and and to as it can be, we tend to do things. I mean, it is our habit to approach things like, say work or duties or chores or responsibilities, and feel that that's somehow an imposition, and then we wait for holidays wait for the weekend, wait for the end of the year for our vacation, wait for the end of our life for our retirement. And, we spend all of our time waiting to actually relax and enjoy ourselves, and or thinking it's somewhere off into the future. And then we approach our Dhamma practice in the same way, and sort of the somehow when I get my samadhi together, then I'll be happy. And it was a perspective that is worthy of mentioning, that we just an assumption, or somehow when I get my insights, or when I finally get my realizations of the Dhamma, then somehow I'll be happy. But if we approach it with a attitude of get my nose to the grindstone and keep this practice going, and then I'll get something out of it. It's a kind of miserable way to practice, and and it's not strange that I feel miserable about our practice, and just to be able to review or reflect what our assumptions are, and to pay attention to, well, how do I enjoy this practice? Because what am I actually doing? It is enjoyable to actually live in a present, mindful, aware state of being. I mean, that's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to have a sense of kind of virtue and integrity in what one is doing, how one lives with other human beings. And so that then being grounded, rooted in precepts, in virtue, sila. That in it is enjoyable to be living in a way that is harmless. It's enjoyable to see things in their true nature rather than looking at things, relating to things as either objects of desire or objects of aversion, which is how we can easily tend to live our life, and that sense of objectifying the world out there, and even objectifying ourselves, because sometimes we become our own object of desire or our own object of aversion. Just because it's us doesn't mean we don't objectify. We're aware enough and have the right perspective to just relate to things as they are. And as we do that, we find that life is much more enjoyable. So I think one of the things that it's important to recognize when we're thinking of enjoyment is that we're not trying to get anything. We don't have to get anything to enjoy. Feel this sense of enjoyment. We don't have to get anything or get what we want, because that's how the mind actually tends to function out of habit and delusion. Is that work on a desire system, and that set up a kind of a perspective or paradigm where we want thing, and if I got it, then I would be happy and I could enjoy this. And we don't observe the fact that is that actually so? Because desire is never really satisfied. It's never really completed. It just looks for another object, and the enjoyment is in just being present with what we're experiencing, because you can actually enjoy sometimes just the fact that you understand desire and not getting fooled again, not getting trapped again. That's incredibly enjoyable. Within this existence that is, I mean, we inhabit this desire realm. The world is like, and it's not. It's neither good or bad. It's just what it is, and the problem is not understanding it, not seeing it clearly. So that in our practice, I think one of course, mindfulness. That's the theme that I brought up yesterday, and there's 4 foundations of mindfulness, and it's been brought up by others, and all of you are meditators and practitioners, so that you've heard of the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness. I think one of the things that's helpful to remind ourselves that mindfulness is, there's a context for this mindfulness, and that we're not, say, just being mindful and paying attention, or just by doing that, then somehow we're going to magically transform ourselves. There is a need to recognize that mindfulness is a part of a process, and that's this Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And so it's part of a process. And so the mindfulness has to fit in with the other aspects of like sort of right effort, say, because if we're too wound up and too tight, striving too hard, it's hard to be mindful. It's there needs to be a kind of a balance of kind of relaxing and just not taking it all so tightly, holding it so tightly, and then it also needs to be, can't be too loose, too lackadaisical. It requires a certain sense of effort, and the effort itself is it's very satisfying to be able to put effort into something and enjoy that. That's not it's not unenjoyable to be diligent and to be kind of have this kind of energy in what we do. It's quite, that in itself is quite enjoyable. So they're seeing this mindfulness as a part of a process. Again, like the mindfulness as a part of, say, effort, mindfulness as a part of concentration, that sense of balance of focus of attention. It's mindfulness that is also monitoring, paying attention, but I think even more so that this whole path of the Buddhas that we are cultivating, that mindfulness plays a central role, but it also, what's its purpose? What's its aim? And of course, the aim that the Buddha repeated over and over and over again, it was for realizing these Four Noble Truths, understanding the ending of dukkha, the understanding that suffering, ending of suffering, understanding unsatisfactoriness or dissatisfaction, dis-ease, and its ending. So that, and it is important to, again, it's not just sort of focusing on all the aspects of what is unsettling, what is unsatisfactory, but also paying attention to its ending, or the well-being that arises, the enjoyment that arises not getting entangled in suffering. So that recognizing that there is a whole path that is functions together. it works together, and of course mindfulness plays a huge role, but mindfulness is in the service of say like clear comprehension is it's just being able to understand the context of things, and of course the context for the Buddha is the ending of dukkha, and so that recognize that and understanding its causes. And this is what these Four Noble Truths: seeing dukkha, seeing what's unsatisfactory, seeing the stress that we do experience, understanding its cause, seeing the cessation, the ending, and cultivating, developing a path leading to its cessation. It's the whole picture, the whole context. And mindfulness is not just picking up a little part of that and forgetting the bigger picture. If you think in terms of this, like in nature, you could have Bayagiri, we've got tons and tons of deer, and in general, especially in nature, sometimes I think that deer at a Bayagiri have got pretty sloppy and lazy and not so mindful. Sometimes you really almost like into them. They don't move sometimes. But if that were in, say, real nature, then they would be, rather than having, the deer have been, so many generations have been born in the monastery that that humans are not a source of concern for them. But in general, deer are, they have to, as all beings do, they have to eat, and they're going to be eating and looking for, you've got to make a choice in terms of what kind of leaves are give them some sort of nourishment, what kind of things that they're eating. You're not going to sort of spend your time chewing on trees, and that's not for a deer. It's not going to get much out of that. Then they want something softer, and so that there's mindfulness and discernment that is being applied, and they have to not just focus in on what they are eating, but paying attention to the surroundings around them, because they're also subject to being eaten, and that's just part of nature. So they need to keep a broad perspective of being alert and careful. And as they are looking to eat, but they're also don't want to get eaten. And so then they have to exercise mindfulness. If they're just focused in on one little thing, on looking for one particular kind of leaf all the time, they'll probably end up being food for. I mean, there are plenty of mountain lions around, and they are they'll end up as food. Say birds are similar. Birds have to sort of pick out seeds even if it's on the ground in gravel. You see them. They need to be able to pick out what's the seed and what is the gravel, what's the dirt, and they do. I mean, they find that they've got to focus in, they've got to pay attention, they have to get honed in on that, but they also have to be paying attention to predators around them, the surroundings, is it safe? Is it so that context is so important. And so because say as practitioners, we can be overly concerned. Oh, I've got to be mindful of my breath. I've got to be mindful of my whatever. I mean, all these things and particular method, the technique, and we forget the context. And obviously, one can be, say, the other extreme of just paying attention to the big picture, and then they're not very alert and attentive to the details. And so that mindfulness is something that functions in conjunction with the rest of the path. And the path has a purpose in terms of realizing dukkha and the ending of dukkha. And so that understanding how these things fit together, how they work together. It's like a musician. It's not enough to just know how to play notes. You want to know how to make music. So for us as meditators, it's not enough to just sort of, memorize whatever the details of what we're supposed to be mindful of. We also have to learn, well, what is the big picture? What are we trying to do? And what's its purpose? What's its function? What's the context? So so as we cultivate, as we practice, recognizing that there are these different elements that need to be put together as practitioners in order for us to experience the fruits of the practice. That was an image that I heard as a young monk. I heard many, many times of the senior monks sort of saying, it's not enough to just, because sometimes it's like if you're a cook and you're just you need to be able to taste the fruits of your efforts as a cook. And it's not, because sometimes we can just end up being like a spoon that stirs it. And yes, we're performing a function, but we're not really tasting it. Spoons don't actually experience much of the enjoyment of the food that they're stirring. So that we need to be able to experience and enjoy, say, the fruits of the practice. It's not just getting so tightly focused on the mechanics of things or the methodology of things. Because especially, say, over the years, just there's so many doubts and so many concerns and questions that people have had have tended to be on the methodology or on the technique and with the sense, and of course there is an appropriate method, and that's actually one of the, say, when the say those 5 purposes of Satipatthana that I mentioned yesterday, that the Buddha put in the Satipatthana Sutta, is it's a realization of the true method. But we can get so tightly focused on trying to, if only I could get the right technique, the right method, and then I'd be okay. All my doubts would be over, and I would experience the fruits. No, you have to learn how to use the method. You have to learn how to use the technique. And I think that's one of the things why, to me, the Buddha's teachings are so inspiring or brilliant, is that there's so many different approaches that the Buddha gives. And, maybe sometimes it can be a bit confusing or overwhelming, but in general, what it does is it gives us different tools that we can learn how to experiment with, how we can learn how to make use of them skillfully, and recognize the time and place and occasion for applying them, and then applying them in the right way, so that even these techniques and methods of practice, the Satipatthana, mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, mindfulness of categories or of mind objects, there's an appropriateness to its application, and learning how to pay attention and recognize, is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate? Is it working? Is it not working? And, I think one of the indications, good indication, is enjoyment. Are we enjoying the practice? For years ago, being in a period of retreat, I was in retreat for about a year at Chithurst Forest in England. I took time away from duties as the abbot of Wat Nanachan. This is when I was still living in Thailand. I took a year off to just be in retreat, and went to England, stayed at Chithurst Monastery, and was just go over to the house for the meal, receive my food, have my meal on my own, go back to my good day in the forest. I usually join on the lunar observance days, and do the vigil. And after I'd been in retreat 6-7 months, something like that, there was a person who I knew lived nearby, and she saw me at when I was coming over to see my food, and paid respect. She'd been away out of country, and was asking me what I did during my retreat, and so I gave her a sense of my daily routine, which was pretty simple. And get up and do some exercises, do sitting meditation, walking meditation, have a cup of tea, and continue to do walking meditation, sitting meditation, read a Dhamma book, go for the meal, come back, do walking meditation, sitting meditation, read a book, and have some tea in the afternoon, and then do walking meditation, sitting meditation. And she had this horrified look on her face. Oh, John, isn't that boring? Oh, no, this is all boring. It's because it's when you're actually mindful, it's not, nothing's boring. Everything is actually interesting and enjoyable. And things get boring when you say you're not interested in, or you're just forcing yourself to do something, or you're doing it with a kind of an expectation of some kind of reward or something, and then it gets burdensome. But just to be mindful and aware and alert and doing the practice and as the Buddha laid out, and it's sort of fitting in, the different pieces are fitting together. Extremely satisfying and wonderfully enjoyable. So that sense of paying attention to the detail, but also paying attention to the context. Mindfulness is performing a function, so that, yes, we do mindfulness of the breath, or mindfulness of whatever our object of meditation is, or our walking meditation. You pay attention to the detail of the activity, but it's also being able to hold it in that context of dukkha and the ending of dukkha, understanding these Four Noble Truths. And it's not just an intellectual understanding, but it is a context or a framework to be present with, and to recognize that when we do that, then then it's like, as a musician, we're not just playing notes, we're starting to play music, and it's beautiful, enjoyable. So of course, yes, there are details to be attended to. Say, mindfulness of the body is you have to sort of see, well, what's your doorway? It was like yesterday, saying the Buddha's image of mindfulness as a gatekeeper, and reflecting and recognizing what's the gate let's say, like Ajahn Chai used to say that the like mindfulness of the body is like the gate to the monastery. Every a monastery tends to have a gate out the front. And you tend to, especially in Thailand, I mean, you tend to have like a monastery tends to have a boundary around it and a wall and a gate to come in and out. A lot of it's to defining the actual boundary of the monastery, because it's I think for in the West, people have overly idealized ideas or versions of what they think, say, Buddhist monasteries are, and but in Thailand, the range is very huge. And oftentimes, monasteries are places that people, I mean, it's a place where you dump your unwanted cats and dogs. I mean, it's not necessarily performing some huge spiritual purpose, and in places where people come in and out of for mushrooms or hunting even, or cutting down trees. It's I mean, it was a few years ago. Child had the back of the monastery where there is a wall. I mean, they actually had a big vehicle that broke the wall down and then cut a couple very rare trees to, and money was to be made, and so that it does. It's helpful to have walls and a gate to come in and out of. But anyway, Ajahn Chah image of say the gate to the monastery, the entry point to the monastery. You're at your gate, and then but the entry point to Dhamma and realization of Dhamma is mindfulness of the body, and that bringing awareness, attention, mindfulness of the body. Of course, the first aspect of mindfulness of the body that the Buddha teaches is mindfulness of breathing. But then there's all sorts of other aspects that the Buddha gives as a mindfulness of the body, as a means of implementing that over quality of mindfulness that be integrated with the past, integrated with its purpose of realization of the Four Noble Truths, so that mindfulness of the elements of the body, it's that sense of this body being composed of natural elements, the element of solidity, or the earth element, the element of fluidity or of cohesion, the water element, the element of caloricity, of heat, of cold, the fire element, and the element of expansion, contraction, the air element, or of supporting. And so that those are fundamental elements in nature that we experience in the body, and we can use the body as a means of contemplating these elements. We can use the body as a gateway or as a basis for recognition of these elements of everything that we experience externally, that we experience internally, everything that we conceive of as self or of other are just these elements. And we can experience it right here, right in this present moment, in this experience of having a body. And in order to do that, we need to be mindful. We need to be present. We need to be alert. But again, it can't be so tightly focused that we don't see the bigger context. Because we can just get in on I'd say the sense of touch, or a feeling of the hardness of something, and see it. Oh, this is earth element, and then just hone in on that and fix our attention on that, and forget that there's a bigger context. So, this is an expression of the elemental nature of our existence, and it's not personal. It's not me. It's not mine. It's not what I am completely. I mean, in the sense of an identity. It's an expression that changes, that comes together, shifts, moves, expresses itself, reconforms, reconfigures, and it's just these elements. And when we see it, say from the perspective of elements, and then we can there's a kind of a releasing or softening of identification. Luang Por Pasanno's book, Don't Take Your Life Personally, which is a great book title, and because we take everything about our life personally, and it becomes so and when it is that much identification, there's a deep decrease in enjoyment. So that being able to recognize the larger context, and that, again, it's a function of mindfulness, but mindfulness having its context, so that the body is something that, say, certainly the Ajahn Chah and the vast majority of the great forest masters put a lot of emphasis on mindfulness of the body, because it does give a very tangible anchor for experience, and the breath, those elements, mindfulness of the composition of the body. 32 parts of the body, and which is just it's a snapshot of the body. And of course, I'm sure that in the Buddha's time, they knew that there were more than 32 parts. But it's just this, let's say, to get a sense of the these various different aspects of our bodily experience. Hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin, external aspects that display themselves, the different solid aspects of the body underneath the skin, our flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, internal organs, all the various that are in the body, blood, sweat, pus. I mean, and when you see each one, I mean, it's not very active, and that's what the word that is used in that contemplation is asubhagamata, sort of the contemplation of the unattractive. And because we're drawn, well, quite naturally, we're drawn to the attractive. I mean, it's a preference, to be with what's attractive, pleasing to us, beautiful. But the reality is our experience in this human realm is that things are different, various qualities, so that sometimes consciously we need to draw attention to its opposite so that we get a balance. And again, you're using this mindfulness as a means of, say, a balance, of a useful tool for allowing us to approach the experience of the cessation of suffering, the ending of suffering, realization of the path. And when we do that, I mean, this is very enjoyable. And this is not a miserable experience. And I think that's one of the qualities of experience of being around accomplished teachers, how happy they were, and that's a huge inspiration, motivation. That was. I can remember thinking, Ajahn Chah was, he was happy, but he was also unshakable. So that, because sometimes from a worldly perspective, in order to be happy, we have to be getting what we want, or we have to be experiencing what we prefer. And Ajahn Chah was just somebody who was happy and unshakable in whatever situation he was experiencing, and that was a real inspiration for me. It was sort of, wow, I want to do this. I want to do this practice. I want to live this way. If I can end up something like that, then this is worth it. So it's looking to enjoyment of the fruits of the practice, and of course the fruits of the practice don't come just because we fantasize about them. We have to live it. We have to put it, we have to cultivate, we have to develop. And that is one of the, when we speak of the path, practice this Noble Eightfold Path, of which mindfulness it has to be developed, it has to be cultivated, so that, that's what a period of, that's what our life is or can be, or has the possibility of being. But certainly taking 10 days Thanksgiving retreat and finding ourselves of what's worthy of cultivation, what's worthy of developing, and that's what we're doing. And enjoy it, delight in it, and feel a sense of gratitude that you're giving yourself that gift of the practice. So offer that for reflection.